Star Wars. What can be said about... Actually, you know what? This script sucks. I should do another rewrite. The original Star Wars trilogy remains timeless even decades after its release. Whereas most films would fall victim of being products of their time, these three films still resonate with a wide variety of audiences, whether they be film buffs such as myself, sci-fi geeks, or even just the casual viewer. Despite the film losing the Oscar for Best Picture to Woody Allen's Annie Hall, George Lucas would go on to make billions of dollars off the Star Wars franchise, whereas Woody Allen... However, as the years went by, the Star Wars franchise would see a steep decline in quality due to it being in the hands of a director who forgot what made his films great to begin with. But then, a miracle happened. George Lucas sold the rights to Disney. Not only did this mean no more unnecessary changes to the original trilogy, but this also meant 3 brand new feature-length Star Wars films, making the Star Wars saga a trilogy of trilogies. It's pretty redundant, but I guess that's Hollywood for you. Now, when the trailers for The Force Awakens came out, everyone seemed dead set on loving the film, even a whole year before the film would be released. Don't get me wrong. I was excited, but I was also skeptical. Again, the original trilogy are considered to be 3 of the greatest movies of all time, but the prequel trilogy are considered to be 3 of the worst movies of all time.
Wait a minute, 3 of the worst films of all time? Do you mean 2 of the worst films of all time?
No, Revenge of the Sith. I meant 3. Anyways, another thing to note here is that this film was being made by J.J. Abrams, a director who's also had his ups and downs. But now that the film has been released and I've seen it twice, I have to say, it's pretty awesome. In fact, I go as far as to say that it's better than Return of the Jedi. This is the first time since the 80s that a Star Wars movie felt like a genuine film made with passion and effort, and not just some factory-made Hollywood garbage. In the prequel films, George Lucas just shot everything on a green screen, and I remember even as a kid watching the behind-the-scenes featurettes, being disappointed that most of the locations and effects were done on a computer. But here, Abrams brought back the practical effects and on-set locations. Of course, it would be naive of me to believe that Abrams could achieve everything without the help of CG, but there were times where I couldn't tell what was real and what was done on a computer, and I feel like that's how a science fiction or fantasy film should be in the 21st century. I ended up loving the characters that were introduced into this film. Poe was a pretty good character despite not having that much screen time. He was funny, cocky, and his friendship with Finn felt believable. Speaking of Finn, this is definitely my favorite character in the film. First of all, I love the idea of humanizing a stormtrooper and actually giving him a personality as opposed to making him a disposable pawn. We've seen this idea done before in both of the Clone Wars TV shows, but it's great to see this idea be implemented on one of the main protagonists in a feature-length film. Secondly, Finn has the strongest story arc in the film. His whole life, he was trained to do whatever the First Order tells him to do, but as soon as he sees the kind of violence and death he has to have people endure, he decides to ditch the First Order to do some good in the world. I've always found this kind of redemption story to be powerful. I'm happy to see it in a Star Wars film. Now on to the main protagonist of the film, Rey. One of the big complaints that people have with her is that she's a bit of a Mary Sue, and that she's too overpowered. I'll admit, I do see where these people are coming from. In fact, I find it a bit weird that she already knows how to mind trick people despite having no Jedi training. I mean, all Luke knew how to do at that time was talk to Obi-Wan after he died. But I don't think that takes away too much from her likability as a character. Throughout the film, I genuinely cared about what she was going through, and I felt the chemistry between her and Finn. Kylo Ren was a very interesting villain. He's like if you were to give an angry teenager a high amount of power. While I did find this character interesting, I find that he becomes less intimidating as soon as he takes off his mask. Actually, now that I think about it, he kind of looks like Tim Burton. One of the biggest complaints this film gets is how the story is too similar to A New Hope. While I won't deny the similarities are there, a lot of people act like J.J. Abrams pulled a Gus Van Sant and just did a shot-for-shot remake. From the opening shot of the film, we see a silhouette shot of the Star Destroyer from below, as opposed to the opening shot of A New Hope where there wasn't a silhouette and the shot was from behind the Star Destroyer. Right from the start, Abrams is telling the audience that yes, the film will be similar to the original trilogy, but will have enough differences to call it his own work of art. And yes, the film borrows a lot of story elements from A New Hope, such as the wise old master dying. Putting aside the fact that this is a trope as old as time in terms of fantasy, this is another example of following a similar formula but doing enough differences that change the meaning. When Obi-Wan dies in A New Hope, it was after one final fight between a master and his apprentice. And when Han Solo dies... Yeah, I forgot to mention this review might have spoilers. Anyways, when Han Solo dies, it's after one last conversation between father and son. Another interesting note is when Alderaan was destroyed by the Death Star in A New Hope, we saw it from the perspective of Leia looking down on her home planet with remorse. In The Force Awakens, the Starkiller base destroyed more than one planet, and we see it from the perspective of the people who currently inhabit the planet as they're being destroyed. I'd like to take a brief moment here to talk about the movie's ending. The ending of the film is another complaint I hear a lot, and honestly, judging the scene on its own merits and putting aside other people's expectations, I think it might be the best ending of any Star Wars film. I won't go into too much detail on what happens in this scene for the two people who haven't seen it yet, but I will say this. To me, this scene is a perfect example of getting an emotion across with no dialogue whatsoever, using purely the visual medium alone to show a connection between two characters. In short, Star Wars The Force Awakens was the revival that the Star Wars saga desperately needed. I'm a little disappointed that J.J. Abrams and Lawrence Kasdan won't be all around for episodes 8 and 9, but despite all that, I'll be looking forward to what the series has next.